It was, a moving experience that helps ground your language in your body and in your experience. I care that you learn a foreign language that very few people know. If you're not interested in Albanian culture, don't learn Albanian. Get into whatever it is you're into and learn a language that goes along with it, because the benefits are so tremendous beyond the functional ability to speak or read a language.
You're listening to Speaking of Language, a podcast recorded at the Language Resource Center at Cornell University. Each week, we explore a topic related to language pedagogy and language acquisition. This week on Speaking of Language,
Dr. Jamie Edmonds discusses the Critical Languages Institute at Arizona State University and shares his thoughts on the importance and future of language education.
Welcome to a new episode of Speaking of Language. I'm Angelica Kramer, the director of the Language Resource Center at Cornell University.
And I'm Sam Lupowitz, the LRC's media manager. We are joined today by Jamie Edmonds. Dr. Edmonds is the director of the Critical Languages Institute at Arizona State University, which we will hear all about today.
Welcome to Speaking of Language, Jamie.
Thank you so much for the invitation. You both have professionally introduced me in ways that I could only imagine. So I'm super excited to be here.
Good.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here today to speak with you a little bit about my own journey, as well as what we do over at the Critical Languages Institute at Arizona State University. So thank you so much for having me.
You are so welcome. And as a way of getting started, before we get into all the work that you're doing at the Critical Languages Institute, we always like to ask our guests about their background and path with languages. What does that look like for you?
Man, it's been a long journey. I guess it's a long journey for everybody, right? I would say mine is very different, though. I grew up in Rock Hill, also affectionately known as Rock Thrill or Rocking Hill. At least that's what my dad tells me. South Carolina. I really lived outside of that small town in the rural South. Grew up on a dirt road in the middle of nowhere. And it was through education that I was able to escape that dirt road. Now I'm trying to get back to that dirt road because I miss the simplicity of the forest. But that's, through South Carolina's education lottery, I scored high enough on my ACT and had good enough grades to go to college for almost free. So
nice.
Got to be exposed to higher education because of people gambling. And so that feels good to me. No, just kidding. So then got to go to the College of Charleston in Charleston, South Carolina, in-state university, where I got to travel on a study abroad program to Leh Ladakh, India, with two religious studies professors who I am indebted to this day because I was violently ill for the entire time that we were on that study abroad trip, from day one to the end. Part of it, I had to actually come home and eventually have surgery for something that was going on during that trip. So it was a crazy trip, but it changed my life and made me interested in that which I did not understand, which was everything outside of that small town I grew up in. And I just began taking the opportunities that was afforded to me. So Dr. Muhammad Ali at the University of California, Riverside, he was my advisor when I came in as a master's student there. I was, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and had no idea what I was doing. So he, very kindly said, "Hey, do you want to go to Indonesia for 2 months? The department's got some research funds that they can give to you, and I'll set you up in a Muslim orphanage in Indonesia, and connect you with some family members in Salatiga, Indonesia." And I said, "Yeah, why not?" And I went and didn't know any Indonesian. Actually, did not know much about Indonesia. Did not have, obviously smartphones were not a thing at that point. So, so got on an airplane, got on many different airplanes and many different vehicles to eventually arrive at an orphanage supported by Muhammadiyah, an Islamic organization in Indonesia, and stayed there for 2 months. No one spoke any English.
Wow.
So I had to adapt very quickly. Granted, it was one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had in my life because I didn't know any English, and I was given a space. The first night I was given a space, a bedroom is sort of, it had a door, which was good.
It's the little things.
It's the little things, right? It had a door, and it did have a bed that was off the ground that was, made out of wood. And I tried to go to the bathroom because I'd been trapped on a plane for, 40 plus hours. But there was no lighting or anything. So I tried to walk into the bathroom. There was a cat that was in there, didn't see it. And it came out just,
Oh no.
And I said, well, I'm never using the bathroom ever again. And so then I went and laid down in this bed, and the bed collapsed on top of it.
No.
Yep. Luckily, I did learn that some of the orphans knew English because they said too fat, right? And I said, you are correct. And right now, I really need to sleep, right? But they came in, like, all of these, like, young Indonesian kids all came in and, like, got me out of the way, put this bed back together, and, like, tucked me in.
Aww.
And then woke me up like 4 hours later to wake up to pray, right? Regardless, I mean, this really was like a significant moment in my life where, I was actually very much taught to hate Muslims and people that did not look like me in my town growing up. And so there's been this really long unlearning process. And this was a big moment, a big kind of, culminating moment where it was like, holy cow, like, this is amazing. These people care about me, even though I don't know anything about them. And it was through that they let me fumbled through the local university. I think it's it used to be Stein Salatiga, but I think it's EIEN now. I don't know. So I got to do some Indonesian lessons. I bought a dictionary and then just started like practicing with everyone in this kind of smaller village space within Salatiga. And so I didn't actually get any formal language training when I first started learning Indonesian. I really was just learning by fumbling around, by survival. But it turned out that after 2 months of doing that, you learn Indonesian, right? Like, because if you don't, you're not going to eat or get around. So that was really my first, I had done Spanish in high school and I had done some Latin in college. But this was really, my first, like, I want to learn this because I care about what's going on here. And I care about being able to investigate Islamic mysticism in Indonesia. And so, Indonesian was my kind of first real serious language that I took very seriously. And I had the opportunity to study that on my own in Indonesia with faculty, in a traditional classroom at Arizona State University, but also through language intensive like Koti, which does Indonesian intensives during the summer in Salatiga. Although I don't know if they're doing that anymore. But regardless, this was kind of learning this Indonesian so that it became kind of embedded in my research and in my life. What was so cool about it though is that now whenever I speak Indonesian, I can see people having a very confusing moment. I can see Indonesians having a very odd, they're like, what are you? Right.
Sure. Yeah.
Because the Javanese tonation and the sort of Javanese way of speaking Indonesian is how I speak Indonesian. So I sound like some dude that's been living in a rural Javanese town, apparently. So that was kind of my first real intensive, like, want to learn a language, get in there and do the intense stuff. I started giving, professional lectures at universities in Indonesia in Indonesian to try to engage the scholarly community in that way. But my dissertation work took me on an adventure in which I got to travel around with someone I call sort of like the Grateful Dead of Southeast Asia, but without the drugs or rock and roll. Right? So it just, it's really hard to explain, but I got to be a part of this sort of moving assemblage of devotional piety associated with Habib Sheikh bin Abdul Qadir As-Sagaf, who has a fan club called Shaker Mania. He has his own water. He brings anywhere between 30 to 100,000 people together in rice fields, stadiums, performance spaces all across, Indonesia, Malaysia, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and the broader Muslim world. And I ended up being a kind of stumbling into this guy and trying to understand what was making him so popular, what was driving this sort of new religious, but also social movement, right? But also economic movement, because there's a whole merchant class that travels with it. And as a part of this, he also sings songs in Javanese. So we are now on, and he sings songs in Arabic. So then I have to pick up Arabic again, mostly for translation because we're not communicating in Arabic. And then I have to pick up Javanese again, which is super hard to learn. Lots of languages are hard to learn. But this one in particular was difficult because they weren't teaching it to me in English. It was taught to me in Indonesian. So learning Javanese through Indonesian was super helpful. It made my Indonesian so good, but reinforced that sort of Jamie's talking like a Javanese person because my brain's all getting the grammar is all getting connected to Javanese in ways that I can't unconnect. But I did like 3 months of just one-on-one Javanese language instruction. And it was brutal. I would lay down between classes, just to take a nap, to get a 50-minute break, refresh the brain, and go back and do it again. It was a struggle. Learning a third or fourth language in a second language it was like really challenging. But man, it was transformative. I wish everybody got the opportunity to do it because it made the second language so much stronger, and it made me understand my research so much better. So sorry, that was a very long way of saying lots of different language experience. And now I work at the Malikian Center, which teaches none of those languages and is focused on Eurasia, Russia, and East Europe. So I've also got to play around with sort of Slavic languages, which it turns out a lot of the instructors don't enjoy my playfulness as much as I thought they would.
So, Jamie, this is the perfect segue into talking more about the Critical Languages Institute that you are directing. What is CLI's mission, and what does the Institute do?
Thanks so much for asking. I mean, the Critical Language Institute, I like to think about it like the instructional wing of the Malikian Center for Russian, Eurasian, and East European Studies. Not saying we don't do other instructional things outside of the Critical Languages Institute, but a huge part of the advocacy that the Malikian Center does for the East European and Eurasian community is teaching these East European and Slavic languages, or Eurasian languages. That just whatever boundary you would like to put on it is fine. But Albanian, Armenian, Russian, Ukrainian, Kazakh, Persian, Tatar, Turkish. We like to think of ourselves as teaching languages on two sides of conflict, or on both sides of conflict. It's promoting dialogue between not only these two locations, but also students and U.S. interested parties that want to learn about these regions. And what we do is provide intensive and immersive language training in online and abroad environments in 12 critical languages with scholarship support. So one of the amazing things, I'm sure you're kind of watching how the language education space is changing right now, and how destructive some of the funding cuts might be to the future of language education in the United States, particularly some of these less commonly taught languages, right? One of the cool things is that the Malikian Center does have an endowment. It's not big, guys. It's not a big team, but it's enough that it will allow us to continue to support young or old or whatever interested parties in these languages of the region. And by the end of 7 weeks, or 12 weeks, depending on the program. Most students get intermediate low in a lot of these languages. So it's a very quick way of language acquisition. It's very intense. It breaks students' brains, as I like to say, because they start dreaming in other languages and all the things that come with language acquisition. And we have study abroad programs all across the region. We're just moving one of our language programs actually to a different university in Uzbekistan, the American University of Technology, which is super cool because it's an ASU powered university in the sense that it's got connections with ASU and the American academic enterprise in ways that other universities do not. Sorry, that was a long-winded statement of saying we do intensive and immersive language training domestically and abroad with scholarship support for the most affordable programs in the country, as far as I'm aware. And students always ask, well, which language should I take? And I would always say, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. It also doesn't care to me if you come to the Critical Languages Institute. I care that you learn a foreign language that very few people know. I care that you go, like, if you're not interested in Albanian culture, don't learn Albanian. But look at all of these other cultural things going, or geopolitical, or whatever you're into, man. Get into whatever it is you're into and learn a language that goes along with it, because the benefits are so tremendous beyond the functional ability to learn to speak or read a language. And it's scary to me that there's not as much support for student education in foreign language. There's lots of other countries that actually invest a ton in having people learn foreign languages. And so it is a skill that is important to national security. It's important for career security, even if we don't exactly know what it will lead to, such as if you get an engineering degree, you'll be an engineer.
Yeah, terrific. Well, let's talk some more nuts and bolts now that we're into this. What does a typical day look like for CLI students abroad or online? Do students need prior language proficiency? Who is eligible? Tell us all the things.
Okay, thanks, Sam. If you're below 16, we can typically get you in terms of eligibility, but it's a little bit more complicated. So typically 16 to as old as you would like to be on our programs, you're eligible. You don't have to be an undergraduate student. You don't have to be a graduate student. We typically have members that come to our programs anywhere from 16 or below all the way to, I think last year we had 65, 67. So it's a very wide range. Yeah. Obviously, we do have a lot more in the undergraduate and graduate space, but we're really just interested in anyone that wants to become interested in these languages and cultures of our region. In terms of what we offer, you don't have to have any language training whatsoever before you come. In fact, if you're a heritage speaker, it's a little bit more tricky to embed yourself in these classes because they're not necessarily designed for heritage language learning. They're more designed for students who have no training or know a few words at the first year level. And we have, I think, 12 languages at the first year level, and those will be for 7 weeks during the summer. And you're typically on Zoom for 4 hours per day, Monday through Friday, with your instructor, learning that language. It can be rather challenging, but most of our faculty have been teaching for, 20 plus years in the language learning space. Some of them have taught for us for 25 years in the summer, and they're native speakers. So what we found is that students actually perform quite well doing these language classes over Zoom, that their fluency outcomes are actually the same, if not better, if they're just doing them in person, particularly because Arizona is the service of the sun during the summer. And I don't want to be here. So I certainly don't expect anyone else to want to be here. But that also reduces your cost, right? And we're very aware of being accessible to all, or as much as we possibly can. And so we don't charge tuition. We charge a flat fee for these first year classes to make the barrier of entry into
Nice.
these very, very low, or as low as we can make it,
Sure.
right? They're $2,000, but you can get a $2,000 scholarship. You might get $1,000 scholarship. And simultaneously at our second year in advanced levels, we have study abroad programs all over the world. And so what a typical day looks like depends obviously on the location.
Sure.
But, we launched a program last year in Daugavpils, Latvia, for 3rd through 6th year Russian. And so those days I kind of like their schedule because they do have 4 to 5 hours a day of Russian instruction, but it's broken up with area studies courses,
nice.
lectures around area studies, conversation partners, so that they're practicing what they've learned. It's very conversation. It's based on the communicative method, so it's very conversation based. And then you have built-in excursions on the weekends and sometimes during the weeknights, such as obviously museums, but also field trips to Riga, and they end in a banya. They all go to the banya together and have a giant feast on a river. That's how they end the program. So it's intensive in the same way. It's a more immersive. You're living with a host family in Daugavpils, Latvia. We partner with Learn Russian in the EU, which is a very reputable partner in the region. But it's you wake up with your host family, you eat whatever they serve you, you go to class. I think I recently talked to a student that was there, and he said he ate more burgers and pizza in Latvia than he did in the US. And I was like,
funny.
well, why did that? What? And he said, because the lunch places right outside the university were all burgers and pizza. Except that if he walked an extra half a block, he would hit some other food, but whatever. So, lunch, and then the afternoon, they might have another class, another culture class. I think they did some bunker tours. It's exciting. In Kyrgyzstan, for example, there's a weekend where they all get to go horseback riding into the Kyrgyz mountains and then go swimming in Lake Issyk. Look, I did it once with them. It was great.
Wonderful.
It was, a moving experience that helps ground your language in your body and in your experience in ways that you can't do in a sort of more traditional classroom or online. We just try to do it, save those for our second year in advanced levels once you've kind of got the basis in, partially because there's more funding at the second year in advanced levels for language, but also because if you're going to do it right, do it in country.
So what has the feedback been from participating students other than that they might eat more burgers and pizza? In the case of that one student, how has CLI impacted their lives and potential future careers?
It's pretty incredible what people do with the opportunity. And that's what I try to flag for students, is that whatever you want to do with this opportunity is up to you. I can give it to you, but the outcomes are not as simple as, I learned X, Y, and Z language, and therefore I'm going to go work for the Department of State. That is one way that people use languages. That is actually one of the ways that we as the center have started building on a member of the Department of State who came through the Critical Language Institute like 20 plus years ago and is now running the digital diplomacy exchange with the EU. And we have gotten involved in that exchange because this individual was an alumni and believes so much in what we do, right? So it's actually really cool when an alumni comes back, especially someone pretty high up in the Department of State that says, hey, can you help us with this diplomacy exchange, right? Turns out a lot of those kinds of things happened. So definitely more traditional. There's members that go to the intelligence apparatus. There's members that go to the Department of State. We have people. We just had a student that came through our first year Armenian class. She did 7 weeks online, but then she did the 4-week extension, which gives her 4 weeks in Yerevan. And she absolutely fell in love with Armenian.
Nice.
She was and is now collaborating with and someone else that came through our Armenian program that's now at Oxford or just graduated from Oxford working on classical Armenian. She's gotten very interested in these Armenian texts, doing kind of hardcore textual analysis, and our members of our board have access to some Armenian texts that others do not. It's this really interesting scholarly exchange in which, a year ago, she didn't really know much about Armenia. And now she's like, I'm totally into it.
Yeah, that's great.
And we had, I think someone from Cornell was learning Persian. She learned Persian with us. We also have individuals who learn the language and then do something with tech companies over in the region. So we've had some members that have started educational tech companies or been a part of educational startup companies in, I think it was Albania. We have Uzbek Brian, who now has a podcast, who came through the Critical Languages Institute and is kind of a rock star talking about Uzbek happenings. I have 2 students that learned Ukrainian, and we have a faculty member at ASU that got money in his book proposal to pay them to work on data related to Russia's stealing of Ukrainian children. Now that's a very serious topic, but these students are getting paid to do this work and use their language. So I think interesting things come along just because a little bit about the language and culture. So lots of different outcomes for lots of different individuals, whether it be a more traditional career path into the intelligence, diplomacy, government work, or tech companies, or dissertation research and academia. It's kind of all over the place. We do know that I think around 30-ish% of Arizona State University's student Fulbrights come through one of our programs as well. So we know that our kind of, as well as, I can't remember the percentage, but born recipients every year also. So we're kind of a pipeline for also larger fellowships for students, whether it be Fulbright, Boren. We take Gilman, but Gilman's in the CLS, Critical Language Scholarship. So come cut your teeth with us, and you know what I mean? Like come, experience the chaos with us, and then use us as a jumping board for other things. If you're, worried about that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, and that's a great seg to our next question, which you already talked a little bit about. But in times of severe program eliminations, why are programs like CLI important, and why should students consider applying?
Okay, why does it matter, or why keep taking it? I'll give you a great example. There are people leaving the Department of State right now, obviously, or I shouldn't say leaving. They've been, would have laid off, bored off, whatever, who are now being approached by the largest companies on the planet who, figured out that it turns out that you actually need a diplomat to do business in these regions. It turns out that sending someone that knows the technology, that knows project management, that knows whatever it is from these companies to then try to expand and understand other places, they can't do it. Or they can't do it efficiently, successfully, or cheaply. And so, I think private diplomacy is going to become a very lucrative trade. I think if we continue on the current path, I think that privatized diplomacy, whatever that looks like, could look really interesting. So take a language so that you can create your own career. That's a new thing that's out there that I don't think anyone has fully figured out what to do with it or how to work it. But there's money to be made, and it's not that. And knowing one of these languages that no one else thinks is going to matter because large language models are going to make it super easy. And it turns out they're not, which, it matters. I think too, you're going to find that just like anything else, right? The ripple effects of the decrease in funding, the decrease in people learning these languages means that at some point, supply and demand. At some point, the supply is going to be so low, and the demand, even if it's low, is still going to be higher than the supply. And you'll be able to, decide how you use that language and, and charge them a bunch of money. So it is all about job outcome. It's also about the way that it impacts the neurons in your brain, the way that this helps your brain stay fresh and make new connections and stay loose, and find new, if you're an academic who has been studying the same place, using the same language for 20 plus years, learn a new language, do something, please do something more interesting. Learning, this is what gives us new perspectives and new ways of seeing things. So I think there's so many advantages to learning a language. I understand that there are costs that come with it, which is why it's so important to me to keep those as affordable as possible.
Yeah.
And I do believe that in the future, it's not just about whether you're going to functionally use that specific language. It's about what that language gives you. And it gives you an ability to translate between worlds in ways that others are not going to be able to do. As we see in the current world, more worlds are getting more separated and more, they're turning into streams that are not crossing and not communicating with one another. And the only way that we're going to be able to get things done in any sort of business environment is to have people who can go between these worlds, go between the business and the government, or the, whatever these sectors are. And I think that language learning, regardless of the language, enables you to do that. It enables you to inhabit a different space that then enables you to speak to how to translate between your world and others. And if we don't have more of that, then we're just going to keep getting specialized in a way that is unhelpful to me. But that's my own take.
Yeah.
I think the messaging I want to get across is I want people to come to the Critical Language Institute. That's great. But really what I care about is that we continue as a community to support any language learning. I don't care what the language is, don't care where it is, don't care who it is, don't care what you look like, where you come from, where you're going. But that language learning, regardless of what federal funding or colleges may be telling us right now, which is cutting it, is a foundational component of human society, of human thriving, and that it's fun.
Jamie, where can our listeners find out more about the Critical Languages Institute?
Thanks. So you can search CLI. You can go to our website at cli@asu.edu. That's just the abbreviation, cli@asu.edu. We're on any of our social media channels. The Critical Language Institute is on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So obviously willing to follow us there too. If you'd like more information about what scholarship applications or opportunities are coming up.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, it's been such a treat to chat with you about all of these things. But before we sign off, we'd like to ask you for a word in a language you speak, love, are learning, want to learn, whatever that may be, that makes you feel inspired. What's that word?
So the word I gave it was "masihito," which means "Are you still alive?" And this was a very common phrase that I used to joke around with the musicians that I traveled with in Indonesia. This became our little thing where I would be exhausted because it's like being a part of a real band, right? Like you're up till all hours of the night. You're exhausted all the time. So anytime I saw them, I'd be like, "Are you still alive? Masihito." What I did not realize is that phrase had other connotations if they were said not with these friends of mine. And I was really tired one night, and I said, "Masi," I saw this older Javanese lady, and I said, "Isi orip," which is Javanese for it also means "Are you still alive?" But it turns out that what I was actually saying is, "I've actually prayed for your death, dear lady, and I'm surprised to see that you are still alive."
Oh, no.
And the musicians are just losing it. They're losing it, folks. I mean, they're having a ball because they're looking at me asking this lady if she's still alive, and they're like, "Jamie," and one of them pulled me aside and he was like, "Do you know what you're saying when you say that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I kind of understand." He's like, No, it's like she doesn't know you, man. She doesn't know you. Don't ask her that question. She doesn't know you. She think that you were, kind of praying for her death." And I was like, "Oh man." And even though it was an embarrassment, there were so many embarrassments all the time being in kind of a public space all the time. But that one was such a good reminder of the relationality of language, but also that no matter how coy and clever you might be in a foreign language, you're always going to miss context. There's always more to learn. And the more you learn, the less you think you know. And there's something kind of quite beautiful for me about that. So I want to keep learning so that I know less. And also I'm reminded that you should pay attention to just like I remind my students, pay attention to cultural context when you're using certain phrases, right?
There it is.
But in that moment I didn't, and it's okay. But it's also a reminder that, even the expert can make a mistake, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's how we learn, right? Well, Jamie, this was a lot of fun chatting with you and hearing about all your stories. Thank you so much for speaking of language with us today.
And thank you so much for having me and letting me share a little bit about my own journey, as well as the Critical Language Institute. It was a pleasure to meet both you, Sam, and Angelica. You guys are awesome, and it's great to nerd out a little bit about language.
Hear, hear. Join us next week to hear from 3 current students who are involved in the LRC's Language Tutoring and Conversation Hour initiatives. Until then,
Auf Wiederhören.
The Language Resource Center is located on the ground floor of Stimson Hall on Cornell's main campus in Ithaca, New York. Check us out on the web at lrc.cornell.edu.
and follow Cornell LRC on Facebook, Instagram, and Blue Sky.
Speaking of Language is produced by Angelica Kramer and Sam Lupowitz.
Recorded by Sam Lupowitz.
Original music by Sam Lupowitz, Dan Gable, and Joe Gibson.
Thanks also to the College of Arts and Sciences at Cornell University.
As a reminder, the ideas and opinions expressed on this podcast do not reflect those of the College of Arts and Sciences or any other official entity of Cornell University.
We thank our listeners, and do stay tuned for our next episode.
There's always more to learn, man.